Okay, good day. We are already in chapter 2, but before we begin our chapter 2, let's have a recap of what is chapter 1, which is Introduction to Systems Analysis and Design. So it's all about the overview of systems analysis and design, all about information technology, and the important roles of IT department and the systems analyst in a company that has something to do with systems analysis and design. So let's go with chapter 2, analyzing the business case. So the following are the chapter objectives. Explain the concept of a business case and how a business case affects an IT project. Describe the strategic planning process and why it is important to the IT team. Conduct a SWOT analysis and describe the 4 factors involved. Explain the purpose of a mission statement. Explain the SDLC serves as a framework for systems development. List the reasons for systems projects and factors that affect such projects. And then describe systems request and the role of the systems review committee. Define operational, technical, economic, and schedule feasibility. And then describe the steps and the end product of a preliminary investigation. So again, for the introduction for this chapter 2, so the term business case refers to the reasons or justifications for a proposal. So a characteristic of a strong business case suggests that the company should pursue the alternative above other options because it would be in the firm's best interest to do so. So systems development typically starts with a systems request, followed by a preliminary investigation, which includes a feasibility study. This is really needed for preliminary investigation to include a feasibility study so that if the system request, is it really feasible? Is it really important that this request be done for the improvement of a business process? So for strategic planning, it is a framework for the IT systems development. So for its overview, we have the so-called SWOT analysis. SWOT, S stands for strength, and then W stand for weaknesses, and then O for opportunities, and then T for threats. So that's SWOT analysis. Okay, let's look at the example here. So this is, I think it's a company or an office that they are doing a SWOT analysis. Okay, before we delve into the example, so strengths and weaknesses, these are classified as internal. This is already inherent or a characteristic of a company. And then opportunities and threats, these are all external factors rather. Then opportunities, if you can tap it, it will eventually be a strength. So that actually opportunities is also very important. And then of course threats. So threats, it may be a weakness. So we have to be very careful. So let's start with strengths. So for this example, again, it's internal. Actually, it's easier to identify strengths and weaknesses rather than opportunities and threats. Because opportunities and threats, you're going to think outside of the box, outside of your company. What affects your company in an outer perspective. So we have strengths. So we have this example. For them, we have excellent web design staff is a strength. Low systems analyst turnover. Meaning of low systems analyst turnover. They're always hiring new systems analysts. For example, in 1 month's time, the systems analysts were going to resign, and then another systems analyst, and then if the pattern goes on, that is called the turnover. So they have a low systems analyst turnover, meaning the systems analyst stays there for work, or he or she is satisfied with his or her job at the company. And then another strength is recently upgraded network, of course, a better IT infrastructure. Okay, next, for weaknesses, the problem with assessing weaknesses is sometimes people who assume weaknesses or right weaknesses. They're in denial. They cannot they cannot say that this is really happening in the company. So for weaknesses, you should be honest as possible, and you should admit that this is really the weakness of your company, because if you will not admit it, how it will be eliminated, or how these weaknesses will be eliminated, or if not, at least the status is improved. Okay, so for weaknesses, still using several legacy systems. As we have already discussed, legacy systems are old systems. They are not using newer technology and software. And then budget increase was turned down. Maybe there is a proposal for budget increase, but then it was turned down. And then documentation needs updating. So of course it's also a weakness, because they need to update, because an outdated documentation is will not reflect the actual business processes. Okay, next is we have the opportunity. So, what are the opportunities written here? So, well positioned for expansion. So, that's their opportunity. Again, opportunity is already an external factor that you have to consider. And then, another opportunity is can be first with new software. And then, high potential for business to business growth. So, that's their opportunities. And threats, of course. Threats is aggressive new web competition. So they're rivals or they're competitors at the market. And then impact of new FCC rules. Actually, there are also specifically if FCC rules, for example, here in the Philippines, if there are government rules and regulations, and then it will negatively impact the operations of a company, it is already a type of threat. And then other firms offer better benefits. So that's their threats. So for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, or SWOT, you really need to think through. It's better to think as a team, brainstorming, and then you can come up with a SWOT analysis. Okay, next is from strategic plans to business results. Okay, so we have a mission statement. All companies must have a mission statement. Why? Why? Of course. What is the reason why this company is built? What is its purpose and objective? And then of course, who are the stakeholders who will benefit the if this company is built? And then we have the goals, and of course the goal is this the end product of their mission. And then we have the objectives. These objectives are their, of course, purpose to reach that goals that they have indicated. Okay, next is we have a case tool example. For example, you are a systems analyst, and then you research the visible analyst case tool. So planning statements can include assumptions, goals, objectives, and critical success factors, and many other types of statements. So that's the step for example, you're going to do as a systems analyst. So the role of the IT department in project evaluation. Management leadership and information technology are linked closely, and remarkable changes have occurred in both areas. So now it's that before, for example, information technology, they're just on their own. But now they're always talking to the management. Of course, management are also stakeholders of the information systems project that they are doing. And then today, systems development is much more team-oriented. Specifically, if you're going to go to an IT industry, of course, no man is an island. You need to work in a team. So it's very important that's why most of our activities we are doing, specifically in my class, I always do it in a team, because if you're going to have a job, specifically in IT industry, you need to have a good working relationship with teams. You're very good in adapting to different types of people. And you're very good. You're not just good in working alone, but you can also work along with your colleagues. And then, although team-oriented development is the norm, some companies see the role of the IT department as a gatekeeper, because of course there are the ones who the department is the one who's doing the systems, information systems, and other systems that is used for the business processes. Okay, the future. If you could look into the future, here is what you might see. Of course, new industries, products and services emerging from amazing advances in information technology, customers who expect world-class IT support, a surge in internet-based commerce, and a global business environment that is dynamic and incredibly challenging. So let's return to the business case. So what is a business case? Business case should be comprehensive yet easy to understand. It describes the problem in whole detail, but it should not use highly technical words, technical jargon, or highfalutin words. You don't need to do that because there are many people who's going to read the business case, and of course, if it's a technical one, you don't need those words in order to impress them. They need to understand that, not to impress them with the use of your words. And then should describe the project clearly, provide the justification to proceed, and estimate the project's financial impact. So that is the objective of a business case. And then next, for information systems projects, so we have 6 main reasons for systems projects. Of course, let's start with improved service. Of course, that's why you're having systems project, is you want to improve the service to your clients. And then better performance. Of course, you want, for example, your system to have a faster transaction, and then support for new products and services. If you're offering new products and services, how can you integrate it if your information system does not support such new products and services? And of course, for more information, and then stronger controls, for example, for authentication, for example, in accounting, it should be the one who's accessing those systems are the accountants, and then for finance and vice versa and anything. And then we have reduced cost, of course. This is another reason for systems project. And these reasons, before you start an information systems project, it will always start with a systems request. And the next is, are rather, factors that affect systems project. Okay, we have 2 types. We have the internal and external factors. So let's start with internal factors. Of course, internal. These are factors that is related to the inside operations and anything. So let's start with strategic plan. Okay, is your IS project is it aligned to the strategic plan? If it is aligned, there's a 100% you're 100% sure that it will move forward. But if your IS project is not aligned with the strategic plan, then there's a possibility, unless you justified it well, that it will not push through. And then also, the top managers, they have a say if you would push forward your IS projects or not. User requests. It's also very important. For example, if the person who wants to change are the users, and then it's to make the system easier for them to use, then there's also a big possibility that your IS project will push through. And then also the information technology department, of course, they have the skills. If they have the skills to do the information system, but then, for example, if it is a new programming language, or this will also affect, because they're the ones who are doing the information system. And then existing systems and data. Of course, as I've already discussed in the first chapter, that example for banks, there are also banks that are still using legacy systems. They cannot compromise the data if they will data and information that they have if they're going to transfer to a newer technology. And then next is we have the external factors, of course, the technology, and then of course also the suppliers. And then the customers, of course, they also have a say for faster transaction or for the better, for improved services, for new products and services. They have also the say if the IS project will continue. And then, of course, a competitor to be at par or better than your competitors. If you're going to have these IS projects, then why not? And then the economy. Is it economical? Can the company accommodate that IS project even if it's too costly? And of course, government. Government has their own rules and regulations that companies must still adhere and follow. Okay, next is we have the project management. If the project is approved, it can be planned, scheduled, monitored and controlled, and reported upon. Individual analysts or IT staff members often handle small projects, but companies usually designate a project manager to coordinate the overall effort for complex projects. For complex projects, um, actually, the setup is not all in the IT department. They will only pick a person from the IT department, from another department, for example, for the accounting, for the financial, for the sales and marketing, and they're going to be combined in a project. So that's the project. That's one of ways for project management. Okay, next is we have evaluation of systems requests. So we have the systems review committee or a computer resources committee evaluate systems request. So we have these forms for system request. A properly designed form streamlines the request process and ensures consistency. So it can be an ISO form, and then occasionally a situation will arise that requires an immediate response. So the systems review committees, most large companies use a systems review committee to evaluate systems requests. But for smaller companies, they rely only on one person to evaluate systems requests instead of a committee. And then the goal is to evaluate the requests and set priorities. Of course, not all systems requests is feasible. You need to analyze and evaluate which of them are feasible and can push to completion or to start at least. Okay, next we have the overview of feasibility. So a systems request must pass several tests called a feasibility study to see whether it is worthwhile to proceed further. So first feasibility is we have the operational feasibility. It depends on several vital issues, but with regards to operational feasibility, for example, if your proposed system will improve the services, the users will be satisfied, the customers, the clients will be satisfied, then it is feasible in operational feasibility. Okay, next is we have technical feasibility. Technical feasibility means, do you have the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure and resources to push through with that project? If not, then it is not feasible. If yes, of course, the project can start. Okay, next is economic feasibility. So we have total cost of ownership. So how much will the company be investing in that IS project? And then, what are the tangible benefits if that project will be successful? And also the intangible benefits. For example, tangible benefits, more revenue, of course, more revenue, more income. And then for intangible benefits is, for example, you have noticed that there is improved performance or improved service. So that's, and the customers are satisfied and then they have comments. So these are the examples of intangible benefits. And then next is schedule feasibility. Of course, schedule feasibility, if you have a time frame, can your IS project be finished on the said amount of time? So if it is, it can push through, but if not, you have to consider or adjust in order for it to be feasible in schedule. Okay, next is evaluating feasibility. The first step in evaluating feasibility is to identify and weed out systems requests that are not feasible. That's the first step. And then there is also another one. Even if the request is feasible, it might not be necessary. So you have to set priorities for your system's request. This is feasible, for example, technically feasible, economically feasible, and it is feasible with schedule. But then, it's not necessary. It will just incur another cost to the company. So you have to really evaluate, even though if it is feasible. Then feasibility analysis is an ongoing task that must be performed throughout the system's development process. Okay, setting priorities. Factors that affect priority. These are the uh, key questions. For example, if you are a systems analyst for your IS project to start. So first is we have, will the proposed system reduce costs? Or where? Where will the system reduce cost? When? How? And how much? Will the system increase revenue for the company? Where? When? How? And how much? And then, will the system's project result in more information or produce better results? How? Are the results measurable? And then, will the system serve customers better? Will the system serve the organization better? And then another set of questions, can the project be implemented in a reasonable time period? And how long will the results last? Are the necessary financial, human, and technical resources available? Whenever possible, the analyst should evaluate a proposed project based on tangible costs and benefits that represent actual or approximate dollar values. Or if, of course, in the Philippines, of course, it's Philippine peso value. Okay, next is we have discretionary and non-discretionary projects. So projects where management has a choice in implementing them are called discretionary projects. That's why the word discretion, meaning they have a choice. They can continue it or not. Then projects where no choice exists are called non-discretionary projects. So these are projects that is mandated by the government that must be done by the company. So that is a non-discretionary projects because whether the company likes it or not, they have to create this system because the government has mandated it to do so. Okay, next is we have the preliminary investigation overview. So, what is this preliminary investigation? We are ways of how are we going to get data, the actual data of how, if there is a problem for the system's request. Is this really feasible? Is the problem really true or only the perspective of one user? So, preliminary investigation is very important. So, interaction with managers and users. Let people know about the investigation and explain your role. You're not going to barge into their office and then be nosy in their operations. No, you have to let them know about this investigation, what it is the purpose, and explain your role, why you are doing this. And then employee attitudes and reactions are important and must be considered. Be careful in your use of the word problem because problem depends upon the effect or the impact of the word depends upon the emotional state or the mental state of the one you are talking to. So for them, maybe a problem is already very big. And then for the other, it's just no big deal. So again, be careful in your use of the word problem. And then question users about additional capability they would like to have. For example, in an information system, you could ask their opinion if you were the one who's going to develop the information system, what would you think is an additional feature that can be added to improve the services, for example, as you are the end user and you are serving the clients. Okay, next is we have For the preliminary investigation, so first is we have to plan the preliminary investigation. So during a preliminary investigation, a systems analyst typically follows a series of steps. The exact procedure depends on the nature of the request, the size of the project, and the degree of urgency. So the first step for the preliminary investigation is understand the problem or opportunity. A popular technique for investigating causes and effects is called a fishbone diagram or Ishikawa diagram. It is created by Kaoru Ishikawa. So we're going to have a demo of how to do this diagram. We already have. Actually, we're also going to do this SWOT analysis. Okay, next is we have step 2. Define the project scope and constraints. Okay, the project scope. What will you do in the project? What are the features that you're going to do? How much will it cost? And the schedule. That's the project scope. And then project creep. What is the meaning of project creep? Project creep means, for example, the management wants to add features, for example, in the systems, information systems that you have proposed. Of course, if you're going to have additional features for that information system, automatically, it will affect the cost and it will also affect the schedule. Of course, additional feature, added cost, and it will also incur additional time in your schedule. So that is project creep. Once you add additional features, anything additional, it will affect the cost and the schedule. And of course, the constraint. Of course, constraint in schedule because you need it to finish it in that given time frame. And then, of course, the cost. You must do the information systems project inside the cost. You cannot be over budgeted or overspending your budget for that project. Okay, next is we have present versus the future. You have to think about it. Is it worth it that you're going to do this information systems project? And then also we have to consider internal factors and external factors. And then you have to also think about the mandatory, of course, mandatory mandated by the government, the features mandated by the government versus desirable. And then regardless of the type, all constraints should be identified as early as possible to avoid future problems and surprises. Okay, next step is perform fact finding. So fact finding involves various techniques. So depending on what information is needed to investigate the system's request, fact finding might consume several hours, days, or weeks. So first for fact finding is you have to analyze first the organization charts. So why? So obtain organization charts to understand how the department functions and identify individuals you might want to interview. For why is it really needed? Example, if you're going to ask some programming issues, will you ask the end users, the users who's using the system, or are you going to ask the programmer inside the IT department? Of course, the answer is if it is programming issues, it should be directed to the any programmers in the IT department, not with the user of the system. Okay, continue with fact finding. So these are the techniques. You could conduct interviews. Interviews with people, of course. You have to, again, with regards to organization charts, you have to identify who the people you're going to interview with depending upon the question. And then also review the documentation. If there is an existing documentation, it is easier than to ask, oh, what is the step-by-step procedure of your office? If there is a documentation, it will be easier for you than to narrate to you the step-by-step procedure. And then, next is observe operations. And then you could also conduct a user survey. Next step is analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data. Before you can evaluate feasibility, you must analyze this data carefully. So the project usability, the cost, the benefit, and the schedule. So what information must you obtain and how will you gather and analyze the information? Nowadays, because of the Data Privacy Act, so you have to be very clear what is the objective if you're going to obtain this data, that it must be confidential, that it will be used for this process only, for this purpose only. And then what sources of information will you use? And what difficulties will you encounter in obtaining information? Nowadays, the one of the difficulties that you may encounter is the Data Privacy Act. Because depending on the company's policy. So that is the first hurdle, the Data Privacy Act. And then, will you conduct interviews? How many people will you interview? And how much time will you need to meet with people and summarize the responses? So, that is the key questions for doing interviews or conducting interviews. Another is, will you conduct a survey? Who will be involved? How much time will it take people to complete it? And then how much time will it take to prepare it and tabulate the results? So that you could do interviews or survey, or if you really have time, you could do both. And then how much will it cost to analyze the information gathered and to prepare a report with findings and recommendations? So next step is evaluate feasibility. Start by reviewing the answers to the questions you ask. Is it operational? Will it improve the service of this particular company if this information, if the system's request be granted? And then technical feasibility again. Does the company have enough resources or IT infrastructure to grant the system's request? And then economic feasibility again. Do they have the budget? And schedule feasibility. Do they have the right amount of time to finish this IS if systems request will be granted? Okay, next step is present results and recommendations to management. The final task in the preliminary investigation is, of course, to prepare a report to management. You cannot keep the results to yourself. You have to report it to the management. What happened to your preliminary investigation? So the format of the preliminary investigation report varies from one company to another. And then, these are the parts. For example, if you're going to present the results and recommendations to management, is you have the introduction of the preliminary investigation, systems requests summary. So maybe you could have a list of systems requests and which of them is denied and retained. And then, findings. You've done interviews, observation, we have survey, review documentation. So, by means of those fact-finding techniques, so what information or data have you obtained, and then the case for action. And then to continue, we also have if the system's request or this IS projects will be granted to start, who will be involved in the project and what are their roles. And then also the time frame that this project must be done, and also how much, and then the expected benefits if this IS will be implemented in the company. And there's an option for appendix, for example, pictures of evidences of the documentation. Have you done the interview or the results or the questionnaires of the survey? So that may be included in the appendix. Okay, so chapter summary. Strategic planning allows a company to examine its purpose, vision, and values, and develops a mission statement which leads to goals, objectives, day-to-day operations, and business results that affect company stakeholders. Systems projects are initiated to improve performance, provide more information, reduce cost, strengthen controls, and provide better service. Then various internal and external factors affect systems projects such as user requests, top management, directives, existing systems, the IT department, software and hardware vendors, technology, customers, competitors, the economy, and government. During the preliminary investigation, the analyst evaluates the system's request and determines whether the project is feasible from an operation, technical, economic, and schedule standpoint. Analysts evaluate systems requests on the basis of the expected costs and benefits, both tangible and intangible. So the steps in the preliminary investigation are to understand the problem or opportunity, define the project scope and constraints, perform fact-finding, analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data, evaluate feasibility, and present results and recommendations to management. And the last task in a preliminary investigation is to prepare a report to management. The report must include an estimate of time, staffing requirements, costs, benefits, and expected results for the next phase of the SDLC. Okay, so we're already finished with chapter 2. Okay, do you have any questions? So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. And then with regards to chapter 2, we're going to delve with of how to do a SWOT analysis and the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram. So again, good day and see you again for the next chapter.